just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
On the 15th of March 2019, Friday Java from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. Very interesting Friday coming up. We give our condolences to the people that lost their lives in New Zealand, an act of terrorism by white supremacists, and from the preliminary results, the supremacists, at least the one that posted on Facebook, came from Australia. Not a surprise at all there. There's a lot of that sentiment in the outback of Australia. It mimics some of what is going on in this country. The far right in Australia was more consolidated, at least in the parliament, before the onset of the present era we're in. We'll call the era the Trump era, an era of hate that is descended upon us in the West, in the East, and in between, actually. So we have these machinations going on, the appearance of right-wing parties across the world, and it's not confined here in the UK. The latest installment of the Tory Prime Minister May's Brexit deal fell apart, voted down by 149 or so votes, and then on Wednesday the idea of to leave without a deal was voted down, so they're in a limbo. But what this illustrates is what can happen when right-wing forces are allowed to take over the electoral process. It happened in the UK basically as here. Social media was used there without so-called Russian interference, and we have more on that so-called Russian interference. Evidently, from a preliminary report, some IP addresses were used in the Russian Federation belonging to an IP. Now, with a word of caution, those types of attacks can easily be done, and IP can be hijacked, and it can appear it is coming from that particular IP address, and in fact it is not. In other words, that particular user was a victim of a phishing attack, a victim of some type of attack. Thus, they were able to take that IP address over and transmit whatever they wished to transmit, and it would appear it was coming through there. Those elementary tricks of masking. So, the takeaway here, when you start putting a political situation into something as tenuous as a cyber attack, because cyber attacks are getting to be very, very sophisticated, and thus people can attack, just imagine, they can attack giants like, of course, that was a denial of service attack on Facebook and its various appendages. But it can happen, and it is happening. If you notice, a lot of the supposedly highly secure sites like Equifax, etc., have been hacked. The Department of Defense was hacked. The government management office was hacked, and thus the information there was taken away by some parties. They've not come out to which parties took the database away. And there are other types of very, very large commercial depositories in the U.S. and about the world that have massive amounts of credit card information, various identification we'll call markers, which could be an ID number, or in the U.S. a social security number, a driver's license number, etc. And those things have been exposed. So it is folly to base a political claim that is predominant, as with the Democratic Party, and the current euphoria of whatever around this so-called attack from the Russian Federation. It could have been meant to be an attack from the Russian Federation, but any fairly sophisticated, not so sophisticated hacker could have carried it out anywhere in the world, and of course any governmental agency could have carried it out, including governmental agencies in the U.S. So this is the takeaway of there with that particular situation. Again, our condolences to the people murdered in New Zealand, and part of that to the political climate. And back to Brexit, the financial house of the United Kingdom is in complete disarray today. And we'll check in with the Miami Herald, skipping around a little bit here, to Venezuela. Evidently, the power is gradually returning in Venezuela. They're bringing back the water supply. This was an attack by various sources that have been pinpointed to come from Chicago and from Houston, Texas. Again, this thing failed. It didn't collapse the Venezuelan government, and China has offered, they have a very sophisticated cyber program there to assist, and no doubt the Russian Federation will assist. This is a difference in 2019. It goes back to the theory of knowledge and certain amounts of equilibrium. There is a socialist theory of knowledge, and basically what it is, and you've heard lots about the Green New Deal, the Green Machine, and whatever else, but when it comes to knowledge, knowledge itself is accessible, and technology moves on. We go back to Moore's Law and other sorts of things, but the whole situation is, as people dive deeper into various types of knowledge, including embedded systems. Now, we first had analog systems, and then we moved on to digital systems, and that's what evidently Venezuela has. And we'll, on our open source report, we almost had it out, but we had to go to South by Southwest. Anyway, nonetheless, that was in Austin, Texas last weekend. We finally got it up. Tune into that. I'm not rambling around. Actually, these things are related in that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was talking about the Green New Deal. Not only that, but other programs such as Medicare, and explaining exactly where it was. It plays into all these systems, including what's happening in Venezuela, and the Trump's administration's now emphasis on defeating what he calls a socialism, and his emphasis on the various candidates running out of the Democratic Party and their various programs. Well, we hate to tell old DJ Trump that has been tried before. That was tried in the 60s against Medicare. Now, the difference there was they had radio commercials, primary radio, and TV commercials where the American Medical Association, Ronald Reagan as an actor, were all denouncing Medicare. Became a very successful program. As the same thing, the late, great Jerry Pippin talked about the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. As more people use it, they will like it. There's a history of these things happening. But there are also counterproductive things happening also out there, and this is the Brexit deal falling apart there, the global decline, the declines we recently saw in the U.S., all of these things. This is in the economic sphere, or the economy of these various industrialized capitalist countries, and it manifests itself in what is happening in the political theater. And this you see in New Zealand, but you see also the racist thing that brought about a Brexit. And that's all it was. And Fugel, or whatever his name is, he was in the Trump campaign here. And this talks lots about, speaks to the state of industrial capitalism itself. And we'll talk more about that on Numbers, man. That's our macroeconomics program. We don't do as much of the philosophy there. What do we do there is a statistical program as what this is, and we'll get to some polling here shortly. Another announcement, Beto O'Rourke of El Paso, Texas, announced his run for the president. He was on a marathon tour of Iowa, the backwaters of Iowa, driving a Dodge minivan. In fact, there was a little video he posted on Twitter where he's literally filling up the tank and wanting funds so he can keep on the move. Now, this is unusual presidential candidate where a campaign where a candidate actually is driving himself around with a small staff, and he'll be doing that in Iowa on the roads there. And as he finishes up Iowa, he'll go to New Hampshire and just keep on going. Now let's get to our program here. Didn't want to spend as much time, but we thought we would bring some of the, I guess what you'd call loose ends together here. And let me just check something here to see exactly where we are. Okay. Let me just finish up this document thing here that we started with one thing at a time here. This is from the Washington Post. Russian hackers of the Democratic leaders. Some documents were unsealed in a lawsuit. The documents included a forensic analysis by a former FBI cyber crime division top official there, concluded that a web server owned by a Russian internet corporation was used by the Russian hackers to hack the Democratic Party. And they go on to name Gabrevos, I think, anyway. Gabrevos, he filed a defamation lawsuit against BuzzFeed that he was defamed by publishing a dossier. This is written by Christopher Steele, a person of MI5, the British operation there. His holding company is the BX holding company, and the dossier goes on to say, which Trump had denounced. And this, incidentally, dossier was commissioned by the Democratic Party, played a significant role in hacking operation under arrest, they claim, from the FSB, that's the Russian security service. Now, Gavarov has appealed the decision, but meantime in New York, the Times had asked a judge to unseal the evidence submitted in the case, and the district judge there, Ugaro, had ordered that a vast majority of the materials in the case, including legal breach depositions from key players, be unsealed. That was on Thursday. And it gives a little history of what happened there. That Steele was hired, this is Steele, the MI5 spy, to research Trump and Russia by Fusion GS. This was by a law firm representing the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign. In an excerpt of the deposition with Steele in London unsealed Thursday, Steele said he had not intended for the information to be published, and he cautioned that it came from human sources. Asked why he offered such caveats, he said, because human intelligence is not science. Now, this is very important to remember. It is not science, it's human intelligence, and it can be hearsay, and many times it is. It's a complicated set of principles and information that has to be analyzed in an equally complicated and thorough way. Now, the forensic analysis was conducted by Anthony Ferrante, I suppose, global head of cyber security at FTI Consulting. He's a former person from the FBI's cyber division, and a former cyber official from the FBI. I had a class with an individual that ran, was an official in the cyber command, and a former FBI agent had just retired. This is not as one would say, as foolproof as one would say. They go to Podesta as heck when he or an aide checked on a malicious link. The link was created on a server belonging to Root AS, which is owned by XBT. Well, that can easily happen. And we'll get a little bit more into this. An attorney for Gavarov, Evan Fry, wins a ridicule report. He's spending $4.5 million and not being able to sustain the allegations made in the dossier. Then pivotal to try and show how our network may have been used, but they don't even prove their conclusion. Now, this is at Fry. Whitzer said the idea that Webzilla could be held responsible for others using its infrastructure to conduct malicious activity was absurd. And it was in the sense that if you start doing that, any network, any IP provider or whatever any IT type of a setup could be there. A cyber expert hired by Gavarov, Eric Cole, said in a dueling forensic report, and this is what you have a lot of this, Ferrante's analysis failed to prove actual supporting evidence for the defendant's claim that the botnets and porn traffic hosted by XBT or its companies facilitated the email theft from the Democratic Party. Cole said Ferrante's finding that an IP address owned was used to create malicious link did not provide proof of the complicity. IP addresses of many large companies have been used in attacks unbeknownst to the companies that own the IP address, and that's true. It's a worldwide situation. That is one of the things to be known. We'll get to this interesting thing. We'll get to this when we do sports about Mr. Calhoun and his entry back into coaching. And this is at a women's school. Now, let's see if we can get a little Beto O'Rourke here. He's addressing a packed house in Iowa. We'll see if we can just hear a little bit of this.
About it this way. Given the challenges that we face, we will not overcome them with only half of the country. with only one party, with only some people who feel a certain way. We absolutely have to make sure that at this moment of division unparalleled since, well, in the last 100 years, a polarization that I haven't seen in my lifetime, partisanship that defines so many of us. We've got to get past those divisions, come back together, find the common ground from which we can work, or those things that we want to change and to make better will never pass. I just greeted a gentleman who was on his way out, and he said, you've got to do something about the healthcare system. My wife's infusions cost $35,000 a month. How do you afford that? Well, ultimately, you don't. If we're going to have guaranteed high quality, universal health care for every single American, then we as a country have to come around that shared goal. If we want to make sure that people can work one job and earn a living wage, so they can be there for themselves, their families, put something aside, read to their child before she goes to bed and wakes up the next morning in first grade instead of working that second or third job, then we're going to have to work together. If we want to listen to and lift up rural communities by partnering with them, those who understand the answers to the questions that are posed here in places like Muscatine, then we've got to be able to work together. If we're going to have real justice reform and address the fact that we have the largest prison population on the face of the planet, disproportionately comprised of people of color, so many there for nonviolent drug offenses. If we are going to end the prohibition on marijuana and expunge the arrest records for those who are there for possession of a substance that's legal in more than half the country, we are going to have to work together. And if we're going to face the ultimate existential threat to us, and more importantly to our kids and grandkids, of climate change, knowing full well that there are but 12 years left to us to do this important work, no one person, no president, no matter how experienced, how strong, how capable, no one political party will be able to accomplish it. It is up to every single one of us. And here's the great news. Though imperfect, sometimes frustrating, this democracy is the most effective system of government known to man. We have the potential to call forth the genius of more than 320 million people to face each and every single one of these problems. We can use our status as the indispensable nation to reassert our global leadership, convene the nations of the world around a challenge that affects every single man, woman, and child on this planet. I know we are capable of it. You know we are capable of it, because when called to the test before, when we've had challenges that affected our future and our fate, we've always stepped up and done the right thing. That's our moment right now, a defining moment of truth for America, and we are going to meet it together. You all with me on this one?
Beto O'Rourke in the state of Iowa on Thursday that he announced his.
I thought after the first quarter.
He announced his campaign there in the state of Iowa. Very interesting. Moving from a coffee shop to a coffee shop. Beto O'Rourke addressing a packed house, and this was part of his first day of campaigning. Let me just move on here. Some more news that came up. The separation, firing of the head of the Southern Public Law Center, an attorney, Morse Dees. I think he's 82 years old. He hadn't been as active in the last few years. They had not stated, the board of directors there had not stated why he was discharged. He's 82 years old. He started they're based in Montgomery, Alabama, in 1971. It was not my decision of what they did. This is Morse Dees talking. He said he was reached by phone. I wish the Senate absolutely the best. Whatever reason they had of theirs, I don't know. On Thursday, he said he hadn't tried a case in at least a decade and hadn't recently been involved in day-to-day operations there at the center. His termination was several steps taken by the organization by Cohen. Today we announced a number of immediate and concrete next steps we are taking, including bringing in an outside organization to conduct a comprehensive assessment of the internal climate and workplace practices, to ensure that our talented staff is working in an environment they deserve, one in which all voices are heard and all staff members are respected. Now, this was part of a complaint against Dees. Let me just finish this up here. Spokesman said the organization was in the process of hiring the firm for the workplace climate assessment. No other leadership changes have been announced. The message seeking a further comment was left on Cohen's mobile. I read the statement they issued, Dees said, and when asked if he knew why he was fired, I feel like some of the things in the statement was unfortunate, but I refuse to say anything negative about the center or its workers. It let my life's work and reputation speak for itself. When asked if he was offered a chance to resign or retire, the 81-year-old said, "I told you all I can tell you." They even took his biography off of their site. Morris Dees is a native of Montgomery. He attended Sidney Liner High School. He managed a direct sales book publishing company while attending the University of Alabama. He also earned a law degree. Well, that's quite obvious. After returning home to establish a law practice in 1960, Dees won a number of civil rights cases and established a center with Joseph Levine Jr. and civil rights activist James Bond. A decade later, there's a picture of he and James Bond there. The legal partnership netted significant civil rights triumphs. Dees challenged systematic discrimination and segregation in Alabama state trooper ranks in a case won in the U.S. Supreme Court. The Southern Poverty Law Center litigated challenging Alabama's legislative districts, forced the state to redraw its districts in the early 1970s, including the election of more than a dozen African American legislatures in 1974. Early lawsuits also brought better working conditions for cotton mill workers in Kentucky. Women in workplaces for destitute defendants on death row. The organization bankrupted the KKK organization, the United Klans of America, in a 1987 civil case. Dees had been a fixture in politics since the group's assertion, and through his organization has faced scrutiny in the past. In 1994, the Montgomery Advertiser series provided a deeper look into the organization controlled by the multimillionaire Dees, illustrating his near single control over the organization and its mammoth budget. The series of Pulitzer Prize finalists revealed a figure seen as heroic by some and single-minded by others. These critics said he was more concerned with fund-raising than with litigating. The series also alleged discriminatory treatment of African workers within the advocacy group, despite its outward efforts to improve the treatment of minorities in the country. Staff at the time accused Morris Dees, the center, of driving a force of being a racist, and black workers have felt threatened and band together. The organization denied the accusation raised in the series. I would hope the IRS and the Justice Department would take this as an opportunity to come in and take a closer look at the center, its finances and day-to-day operation. That said Jim Thorpe, the managing director of the Advertiser, in the mid-90s, who oversaw the series. It's a long overdue. Dee's central role in the organization has also led to numerous threats against him. The Klan tried to blow him up. The organization's nearly $450 million in net assets, according to the most recent publicly available tax documents. That's from 2017. The figure easily dwarfs other civil rights groups like the Equal Justice Initiative and the ACP during the same time frame. The Montgomery-based legal group has about 5.7 million assets at the time, and the ACP about 3.8 million. It's still far behind other groups like the American Civil Liberties Union, which has more than 526 million between the nonprofit and the foundation. That was in 2017. It produces research and advocacy on various topics, including payday lending, civil assets forfeitures, and immigrants' rights. It also continues day-to-day civil rights litigation, including ongoing lawsuit to address prison conditions. The center is deeply committed to having a workplace that reflects its values it espouses, and truth and justice, equality, and inclusion. That's in Cohen's statement. It's a developing story, so check back. We'll check back very quickly, and if there's other information that's not into this particular broadcast, we'll bring it forth later here. Incidentally, the Center, Poverty Law Center, has been on the other end of some civil lawsuits that they had filed and judgments against them. More of these 5 things to know about the founder. Cohen said in a statement, Dee's dismissal over his misconduct was effective immediately on Wednesday, when pressed for details what led to the termination. The organization declined to elaborate, and as attorney Fred Gary and Morris Deed been around a long time, and it's just various things here. Worked in politics, dabbled in politics, worked with Alabama gubernatorial candidate George Wallace in 1958. Wallace earned notoriety. Well, we know what he earned notoriety for there. And let's see if we can get the statement up here. Well, we don't. We didn't get the statement. So, in other words, wait a minute here. We'll get to Cohen's statement, that our founder is no longer working at the center. This is from Richard Cohen, but our work is about cause, not about persons, and is in good hands in the years to come. That's all that he had to say there, so we'll leave it at that. Nonetheless, Morris Dees fired from the center, Southern Poverty Law Center. There obviously will be more coming about that in days to come. And let's get to some polling here. The people at the University of Virginia, of course, off. This is the Reuters poll. Reuters in cooperation with ISO, how you want to pronounce it. Anyway, it's a French entity. This poll is of 2,207 Americans, at 756 Democrats, 809 Republicans, and 408 Independents, plus 18 or older. And the credibility level is 4.1 with Democrats, 3.9 with the Republicans, 5.5 with the Independents, and all 2.1. And let's just jump through here. Generally speaking, you would say this country is headed in the right direction or wrong direction. 57% of wrong track. 57% of adults said wrong track. This always turns out the right track, 31% of all. The Democrats, 84% on the wrong track. The Republicans, 61% on the right track. Right direction. Okay. Anyway, and independents, 61% on the wrong track. Problems facing America. Economy, 12% there. Was a total 12% of Democrats, 14% of the Republicans, 10% of the independents. Unemployment, lack of jobs, very, very low, 3%. Healthcare, 18% overall, 25% of the Democrats, 13% of the Republicans, and 18% of the independents. Energy issues, very, very low there. Education, 4%, total 5% of the Democrats, 4% of the Republicans. The environment, 7% overall, 13% of the Democrats, 3% of the Republicans, and 6% there. So for DJ Trump, his approval rating, this is what you wanted to hear, is at 41%, and that's 9% of Democrats approve him, 81% of the Republicans, and 35% of the independents approve old DJ Trump. And the disapproval there, the total is 54%, 89%, as you would expect, the Democrats, 18% of the Republicans, and 58% of the independents. Very high there on DJ Trump. And let's see, what does he get? The economy, he gets 49% approve on the economy, 43% disapprove, 42% on the foreign policy, 49% disapproved. Healthcare reform, 39% approved, 51% disapprove. Jobs, 51% approve and 41% disapprove. Dealings with Congress, 53% disapprove. Dealings with ISIS, well, that's pretty much gone. 46% approved, 43% disapproved. International trade, 47% disapproved, 44%, yeah, that's pretty good. Taxation, 51% disapproved, 40% approved, not as strong as that. Corruption, 53% disapproved there. The environment, 53% disapproved, 37% approved. Immigration, 49% and disapproved, 45% approved. And the efforts that he is making to unify the country, 40% approved, 52% disapprove, and on the case of Russia, 53%, and so forth and so on. Won't go into the congressional one because it's 12% strongly approved, 34%. Anyway, the total on the congressional thing, 46%, better than before. 55% of the Democrats, 52% of the Republicans, and 38% of the independents. Disapproval is 32 for the independents, 37 for the Republicans, and 58 for the Democrats, 32 there. Anyway, this is how people identified here. 12% were strong Democrats, 16% were moderate Democrats, lean Democrats 7%, lean Republicans there, moderate Republicans 16%, strong Republicans 18%, independents 18%, and in the total thing here, party ID, 29% of these people were Democrats, 30% Republicans. The leaners were 35 and 35, and so forth and so on. We get the Brazian we won't give. Anyway, that is the poll from Reuters. That's our polling for today. And let me just check quickly on the time here. All right, well, we'll go, Jim, Callahan. He used to be the coach at Connecticut. Now he's a coach at the University of St. Joe. This is a women's school founded by the Sisters of Mercy of Connecticut in 1932. Jim Callahan, he's 76 years old, so he's back in the coaching game. It's the first in Mercy Hall. Feels like an old state house there. Anyway, So it shows the president of St. Joseph's College there, Rhonda Free, says she knew she had to take a risk to make a splash. Well, she made a splash, and Jim Callahan is there, and I don't know what they reckons. Callahan's office is past the weight room, so I suppose, well, anyway, at least he's there. The NCAA suspended him. Only have 3 games. That was way back in 2012. So he's back now. It's a single-sex school, dozens of women there, etc. Well, anyway, I had not heard of them before, but Callahan is there. Callahan steps in. And, St. Joe's updated its Wi-Fi system to accommodate internet, including from so forth and so on, the Globe, the Post, and CBS News and others. So it's kind of interesting, this little university here. Anyway, let's go to National Basketball Association here. The Pacers, the Thunder was at the Pacers 108-106. The Cavaliers were defeated by the Magic 120-91. The Kings were defeated by the Celtics 126-120. The Raptors defeated the Lakers 111-98. The T-Wolves were defeated by the Jazz 120-100. And finally, the Mavericks were defeated at one point by the Nuggets 100-99. On to Major League Baseball, spring training going on here. The Red Sox and Tigers 4-4. The Marlins and Astros. Marlins defeated the Astros 12-6. The Twins defeated the Orioles 7-6. The Mets and Cardinals 1-1. The Phillies and Pirates. It was the Pirates 11-2. The Phillies in another squad game, and they won that one 4-3 over the Rays. The Nationals and Twins 10-4 in that one. The Yankees in Toronto 1-1 tie. The Angels and Brewers a 7-7 tie. The Red Sox and Dodgers a 3-3 tie. The Rockies and Cleveland, it was Cleveland 9-3. The Rangers and Royals, Rangers 5-4. The Cubbies defeated the Rangers in another split squad, no doubt, 2-1. And the Giants and D-backs, D-backs shut out the Giants, and another Dodgers squad shut out the Padres 12-zip. On to men's college basketball, North Carolina and Virginia. It was Virginia 76-56. North Carolina 83-70 over Louisville. Duke 84-72 over Syracuse. West Virginia 79-74 over the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Virginia Tech and Florida State was Florida State 65-63. Nevada defeated Boise State 77-69. Kansas State defeated TCU 70-61. Kansas defeated Texas 65-57. Buffalo defeated University of Buffalo 82-46 over Akron. Nebraska defeated Maryland 69-61. Missouri was defeated by Auburn 81-71. St. Joseph's was defeated by Marquette 86-54. And finally, Villanova 73-62 over Providence. On to women's ball. There was only one game, and it was Rice defeating North Texas State 61-43. And to the National Hockey League, the Penguins shut out the Sabres 5-zip. The Canadiens were defeated by the Islanders 2-1. The Capitals defeated the Flyers 5-2. The Blues were shut out by the Senators 2-zip. The Lightning were defeated the Red Wings 5-4. The Stars defeated the Wild 4-1, and the Bruins were defeated by the Winnipeg Jets 4-3. The Ducks were defeated by the Coyotes 6-1, only in the West. The Predators defeated the Kings 3-1, and the Panthers defeated the Sharks 4-2. This is going to do it for Friday Jobber. We'll have on the end of this somewhere the announcement by Vito O'Rourke, about 3 minutes there. And as usual, we start with our normal Friday Jobber. We'll see you on the week that was. That's tomorrow morning. And we'll have Numbers Man, the economic report this weekend, as we usually do. And we'll get the open source report out. We've been working on a new server. I think I talked about that. A Raspberry 2 server. Anyway, have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you later. Oh, and incidentally, on Sunday we'll have St. Paddy's Day, special St. Paddy's Day programming for the Irish and the Irish at heart.
Amy and I are happy to share with you that I'm running to serve you as the next President of the United States of America. This is a defining moment of truth for this country and for every single one of us. The challenges that we face right now, the interconnected crises in our economy, our democracy, and our climate have never been greater, and they will either consume us or they will afford us the greatest opportunity to unleash the genius of the United States of America. In other words, this moment of peril produces perhaps the greatest moment of promise for this country and for everyone inside of it. We can begin by fixing our democracy and ensuring that our government works for everyone and not just for corporations. We can invest in the dignity of those who work and those who seek to work. We can ensure that every single American can see a doctor and be well enough to live to their full potential. And all of us, wherever you live, can acknowledge that if immigration is a problem, it's the best possible problem for this country to have. And we should ensure that there are lawful paths to work, to be with family, and to flee persecution. We can listen to and lift up rural America. We can work on real justice reform and confront the hard truths of slavery and segregation and suppression in these United States of America. We can reassert our global leadership and end these decades-long wars and be there for every woman and man who is served in them. And perhaps most importantly of all, because our very existence depends on it, we can unleash the ingenuity and creativity of millions of Americans who want to ensure that we squarely confront the challenge of climate change before it's too late. This is going to be a positive campaign that seeks to bring out the very best from every single one of us, that seeks to unite a very divided country. We saw the power of this in Texas, where people allowed no difference, however great or however small, to stand between them and divide us, whether it was religion or gender or income or geography. We put our labels and our differences aside to come together for the only thing that matters: the future of this country and the generations that will follow us. Over the coming days, I'm going to travel this country and listen to those who I seek to serve, to understand from your perspective how we can best meet these challenges. On March 30th, I will be back here in El Paso, Texas, and I invite you to join us in a kickoff for this campaign. But even if you cannot be here on March 30th, I still want your help organizing where you live, bringing in friends and family and neighbors to the greatest grassroots campaign this country has ever seen. There's a lot more to come, but I want to leave you with this. The only way for us to live up to the promise of America is to give it our all and to give it for all of us. We are truly now, more than ever, the last great hope of Earth. At this moment of maximum peril and maximum potential, let's show ourselves